Hey, hello, and welcome again. This is another recorded session. This one is going to focus on actually finding your secondary sources for your research paper. And then I'll transition and show just a few common sources that might help you on the primary sources. First of all, as you can see on your screen, hopefully, you've got the Lanier Tech website. So I'm going to show you two good places to find the right kind of sources and how to make sure that you get the correct ones. All right, so when you go into your quick links, go to your MyLTC, the one for students, and right in the center on the second row is library. Click on that. And then on the next screen, this is the library page. You will see a column in the left right under the word library. And if you go down, you'll see Galileo. It's got a drop-down menu. And we're just going to go to Galileo. Right. You will get to this screen, and it's a search. All right. This is a search engine within a database that stores a lot of source materials. It actually connects you to other databases, I should say. You can get all kinds of sources here. You can get newspapers, magazine articles, the journals, which is what we want to look for. You can find some video resources, some primary sources. But your problem isn't going to be finding sources per se. Your problem is going to be making sure that the ones that you find fit the assignment criteria. So, as you can see, when I hover over the search bar, there's a few topics already in there. I had a student who looked at the Gonzalez versus Google case a few years ago. I'll just bring that one up. When you do the search, this is what you see. Now, you might think this is what you need. Journals, that is not what you're looking for. Journals means that there is an entire journal that publishes, I don't know, maybe 7 articles every issue and does that 4 times a year on nothing but Gonzalez versus Google. That is not going to be happening. There's not going to be an entire journal that publishes 4 times a year every single thing on that one case. All right. What you want to look at is articles that appear in journals. So Gonzalez will not have a journal devoted to it, but it may appear in 100 journal articles in journals that are devoted to, as you can see here. The first one, intellectual property and innovation law. All right. So this is the column that you want to look at. And you can see looking for liability, harmful social media content, and cyberbullying after Gonzalez versus Google. This one looks like it's a separate Twitter versus Tamna. That one probably comes on the radar because somewhere in that article, they do talk about the case that we're looking at, which is the Gonzalez case, right? Although the article itself is devoted to a separate case, a more recent case. So this one might actually be more useful. If you've got an entire article devoted to your case, well, again, you'd have to write a 30-page research paper if that's a 30-page article, all right, to cover that topic fully. So what you might actually look at this is, well, maybe I can break this down to looking at future stuff. So maybe this could be something where you pull just something that's appearing on a page or two, right? This one might give you some ideas of what its impact is on the future or the present, actually, since there was a past case. This one can look at, again, the uncertain future. That implies that it's looking at the outcomes moving ahead. So you actually have a lot in there. Now, you got 5 here, maybe 2 of these or something that you can use. At the bottom, it says show more results. When you click on that, it's taking a second, but then you can see you have a whole lot more, all right? If I scroll back up to the top, you can look over to the left and you will see up here where it says previous, go back 1 to 20. So you had 1 to 20 articles here. There's 157 total sources that mention Gonzalez versus Google in some way. These are all what you need. These are all either law reviews or peer-reviewed journals. In fact, Galileo, I think JSTOR also, they dump those two together. Technically, a law review isn't peer-reviewed, but it's the academic, hallmark is a law review article if you're in the legal field. It's actually edited by law school students instead of your peers. The peer review means if you're writing, it's written by people who are already experts, usually people with doctorate degrees in whatever the journal's field is, right? But as you can see, there should be plenty here, right? The hard part for you is if you have trouble finding sources, what you really probably need to first do is look at the words that you use. This one was a specific case, so it's relatively easy. If I'm looking for, say, the death penalty, that's going to be too broad. But death penalty for minors in the United States might give us something else. And you see there's plenty of stuff on here. All right. Show more results, and you can see we will have 82,000 cases on there. Some of these you have to use some discernment. Some of these may still actually be talking about something like death penalty in Europe, death penalty for adults, right? Different things that are not exactly applicable to your case, but oftentimes if you got that many sources, you need to narrow it even further, right? But you can look at these topics and maybe get some ideas of doing that. All right, Lockett v. Ohio. Maybe I want to look at that single case, for example. All right, but that's basically it. That's pretty much all you have to do to find secondary sources that are, in fact, peer-reviewed journals. Now, over here on the left, you see ebooks, and you can use books. All right, this one's about the death penalty. If I go back to Gonzalez versus Google, the thing is, if you've got a recent topic, you can see, if you go to the left, there is no ebook column. That is skewed a little bit. There's probably some other types of sources that have more sources in them, but it's actually moved over here to the center, and you see that there is no ebook. And again, for history, books are fine. You'll find a lot that have stuff that's related to a topic, but for political science, you want to focus on things that are much more current, right? And if you do that, oftentimes you will not see that there's an ebook anywhere, at least here. Now, the reason why is because, again, if it's an academic source, it has to go through this peer review. You can write a short article and get through journal publication relatively quickly, about a couple months. If you write a book, that's usually an endeavor that takes at least minimum a year, a lot of times longer than that. It includes a lot of other things. You got to write it, but you also have to have an editing process and so on. Set up for publication is more difficult, et cetera. So usually you will not see books published on really recent stuff. If it is, again, if you go back to like those topics that are banned, like abortion, we've had some recent changes because Roe versus Wade was overturned. You would go back to 73 for that case, though. So there's probably a bunch of books published on abortion. They may not be relevant to what's happened in the last few years, so they might not really be current, not exactly historical. But the other thing is some of these topics just get so much attention, and that's, again, why those are banned, because if someone's written a book on it, it's very hard to do any justice to it. All right. This is available to us. The college pays for it. You will find a lot of sources there. If you look, it also tells you, like here, you can navigate by these little balloons that are at the top, and you'll see scholarly article. It also tells you in parentheses the number of sources there. You can see it's 157, so which is what we saw on the next page when we scrolled there. The other one is not something the college subscribes to, and that is JSTOR. The actual address, if you can, I don't know if you see the drop down when it comes up, the actual address is jstor.org. Ooh, can't type. Because I think this is run by a nonprofit. However, you saw that JSTOR.com came up. I believe if you type in JSTOR.com, it will redirect you to JSTOR.org. I haven't tried it, but the other, maybe second most common is .net. Looks like that one won't redirect, but if you do the .com, it will. All right. And it basically works the same way. JSTOR is a database that we do not subscribe to. So if you used this, you would have to subscribe yourself, create an account with JSTOR, which you can do up here where it says register on the top right. You click on that, it will let you do that, register with Google. I think that's what I did for my account, or with Microsoft. If you did with Microsoft, you could, I presume, use your college account. But everything on here is not necessarily free, but you can find a lot of stuff that is, and probably more stuff that is free in JSTOR than what you would find in Galileo. I believe Galileo is quite a bit smaller in its holdings than JSTOR is, but I can't type today. Let's make sure I get the spelling exactly right. Oops. Hmm. A little nuance. The bar in that we're recording with actually hides these. So, all right. Okay. All right, again. And just so to reinforce how to navigate through these, if you went to orientation, you heard a lot about going to the MyLTC. So same thing, use the one for students. They actually do not have a link to one to the library on the faculty one. So use yours, go there, then Galileo. Click on the actual Galileo and then, type in, do your search. Now, JSTOR, again, JSTOR.com, JSTOR.org, either one will get you there. It'll redirect. JSTOR.org is the official web address. All right. Same thing, type your search in there. What you come up with is somewhat similar. You only get 2 results here, which is a little bit unusual. It looks like it's an excerpt, perhaps, of something. It's a book chapter. Both of these are book chapters. Interesting. Let's see if we take off the limited liability corporation. If we get more, yes, we get more that way. So again, this is why I say you adjust your words. You'll see more. Journal article comes right up to the top. The business lawyer, all right. The book chapters, all right. Journal article, Virginia Law Review. So you've got more. You see that where it's going through several. I think the way it does the search first is by relevance, right? If you open that, you can see you can do newest or oldest. It doesn't give you one where you can do it by journals first. But if you look at the column on the left, you can see there are 4 journal articles. Click on that. And then you have just those journal articles, and these are what you're looking for. The book chapters may be okay. This is a case that's been out for a couple of years, so it might actually be something that you would see mentioned in books, right? And those may or may not be available. Now, if you look over here, you'll see that you have some options. All right, the first one, business lawyer. Over on the right, you see save site, read online. If you've got an account, you can read online. Right? It'll come up as a PDF. Now, what you cannot do is save or print this. So what you have to do is read it and take your notes out of it as you go, which is actually what we used to do before we really had computers. You had the journals, they were, you know, materials you could not check out of the library. So we would go in with index cards, either write the quote down or paraphrase it, put it in our own words, but put the information on a card, write the citation for it, including the page number, and then you can use it in your research. So same thing, if you look at this one, you can actually get those citations, all right? You do have to log in to get the whole thing, which I'm not going to do right now, but you can actually read that one. Some of the others, if you saw about 2 down from that, Section 230 is First Amendment rule. There's a button that says download. When you hover over it, you can see the content is not available for download. That's why I say some of this is available for free, some is not. Starting back in the shutdown period of COVID, when everybody first shut down, JSTOR started offering up to 100 articles for free under those same terms. You could read them, you could view them, you could not print them or download them. So some of these, if it says download, are ones that are not now made available for free, but they did keep a lot of material that is. So all these ones where you can see read online, those are ones that you could use, right? Some topics, apparently Gonzalez, you might find actually more stuff over in Galileo. Most topics you will find more sources over here in JSTOR, right? So those two are your big secondary sources. Now, primary sources is going to be a little harder to do. So I'm going to show you a few that I use for students very commonly. One of these you would have already seen perhaps because the cases that I excerpt for our discussions often comes from the OIAS, and there is some collaboration between the OIAS.org and the Justia.org where they kind of go back and forth for copies of cases. But you can see a little search bar up in the top. If I wanted to look up Gonzalez versus Google, I can actually come up here and I can see the cases here. Now, you might notice that there is something odd here because you've got, you know, a blank in there. What this means here is this is your citation. You see the blank, that's where the page numbers are. What that means is that they've got a decision, but at this point, they hadn't published it, right? You can go here, and this is what you usually see in your excerpts. You get the facts of the case, you get the question, what was the legal issue they had with, and what the general rule was. You can go a little deeper than that. If you look over on the left, for example, let's say you were doing something with this case. You got the oral argument. They apparently had 2 separate ones, February 21st and May 18th. That would be a separate primary source. Down here, you see the opinion of the court. That would be separate from the oral arguments. Those are not the same source. The arguments are one source. The opinion of the court is a separate source. When you click on the opinion, you can actually read, as you can see, the entire opinion. You see it is Justia. Now, this is kind of like a web view, so you kind of navigate a little different. You can see the oral arguments. You can also see a lot of briefs and filings. These would be separate. You can see a brief by Meta, all right? That's Facebook. For probably most of y'all know that, but then you can see one from Columbia University. All of these would be separate primary sources. So if you were doing something that involves a court case, it's very easy to find those. You could also go in, and there is a Google versus Gonzalez, and you can find, for example, in this, what was at issue was something that is a statute, Communications Decency Act of 1986. If I take this and I do a search for it, I can come up with the actual statute. So that also would be a primary source. Don't trust the court's interpretation of it. Go read that statute for yourself, right? And you can see there are several places where you can get that same thing, all right? All right, going back to the Gonzalez case here. This is the actual decision. You can see it looks pretty brief. What you want to do is probably download the PDF. A lot of these are abbreviated or broken up into sections on a website, I should say, that is different than the way they appear on the document. So you can download these. I think if you scroll down to the very bottom, yeah, it actually doesn't have anything. Let's see here. This separates it out so you can navigate. But that's basically it in a nutshell. That's great for court cases. Now, if you have a statutes, the same thing. You can just go to, you know, United States Code, and it's right there on the house.gov website. You can look it up by title. If you have a statute or something, then you know you've got the title. Say something dealing with labor, you can navigate down to the specific chapter. You could be looking at, I don't know, job training, for example, comprehensive employment and training programs, anything of that nature. You can click on that. It basically opens down until you can eventually navigate straight to usually the single paragraph that you need, right? If you had to do something that's, let's say on environmental regulation, you could find the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, right? Any of those environmental codes, those are the statutes as passed by Congress. Now, a lot of time, as you'll see as we get into the course, the actual rule is going to come from the executive. So what Congress did in the Clean Air Act is say, okay, we need to have a regulation of how much lead goes into the air. Right? But they didn't say how much was safe, how much is dangerous. What they said was, we're going to give the executive, in this case, the Environmental Protection Agency, the power to set the limit of how much lead is acceptable in the air. And then, what you have to do locally, at least, to reduce it if you need to. What that is compiled in is called the Code of Federal Regulations, which you can also access online. Now, if you have the statute, you see that you have titles just like you did for the U.S. Code. And usually what happens is the title, say Title 25 there, relates to Indians, Native Americans. If you go back, then most of the laws dealing with Native Americans might be Title 25 of the U.S. Code, so they kind of match up. But this tells you what the executive's done as far as regulations after that. So those are your governmental sources, your three big ones right there, right? Outside of that, there's all kinds of things that you can use. So it really depends on your topic. If you did something, with campaigns and you were looking at, you might be pulling quotes from candidates or something of that nature, these wouldn't help you. But if you're doing something that actually directly relates to the government in terms of laws, court decisions, or executive actions, then they're all there. You can also find compilations of executive orders. But if you have those other government sources, ask me and I'll help you to find them. Again, there is a good site for using that you can use to get copies of treaties. But again, you want to avoid those international affairs. Those kind of really go for the global issues. So these are really the big ones for you. All right. If you have any questions about what is and is not an acceptable source, of course, email me. If you have trouble finding the sources, email me. If you're spending an inordinate amount of time, email me, because I have had people who email me and say, I've spent like 8 hours looking for sources. I can't find a single one. Can I switch my topic? And I would say, well, let me see what happens to me. And literally within 2 minutes, I said, well, I typed the search in and found 20 sources in with like 30 seconds, right? Oftentimes what it is it's going to come down to your ability to find synonyms. So if you find you're doing something on the Clean Air Act and you might look at air pollution, you might hit a brick wall, you look at environmental regulation, all of a sudden you see under that a bunch of stuff about air regulations, air pollution regulations, et cetera. So you may find, for example, water pollution, nothing. Something, unless you've worked in the field, you may not know. What they call the stuff that you dump in the water is effluents. You might not necessarily be using pollution. It's not the technical term. So it might just be a change of a single word. Gives you a move from 0 to, too many sources, 300 sources, who knows? But if you hit those walls, make sure you email me. Don't just keep wasting time if you're having that trouble. I might be like give you some advice, and it's your job to implement it and follow up on it. It's not my job, of course, to do the work for you, but I'm going to try to guide you in so that you can find those sources and do that research paper well. All right, and that's it for this one. Any questions on any of that, again, email me. And of course, for the primary sources, I'm only going over the big ones. So if you need some directions because your sources are going to be of some other different type than what I've gone over, email me if you really need to, and I'll help you find those as well. All right, thank you.